Hello students, we are going to start our new chapter, that is periodic classification of elements. I have added in the video that why do we need to study about periodic classification, what is the importance, what are the objective about this chapter. This we should know about. If we don't know why, we will not find out how, right? So that's why we need to understand all these things, and because of that we really need to know all these points. So to recapitulate all the things, I have started from the beginning. Okay, so you need to watch the video and enjoy the video, and whatever points you feel that these points are important, you write it down so that you can remember this in your mind. And one more thing students, there are 118 elements, and you know that from this only we can get to know that why do we need to segregate them. If we won't segregate them, then how will you remember them, right? So to make them easy, we are going to study about this chapter so that it is going to be very easy for us. Okay, so watch the video and enjoy.
By now, we are aware of the difference between elements, compounds, and mixtures. Do you remember the differences? Mixtures are like food items that we consume. They contain everything in proportion that we desire. We can add or remove a substance according to our need. Compounds, on the other hand, are those which have substances in fixed proportion. So if you change the proportion of substances, it will affect the compound and render it changed. For instance, if you remove even one hydrogen from H2O, that is water, the composition changes and water as a compound does not exist. Thus, fixed proportion is a must in compounds. Lastly, we have the elements. These are the purest forms of any known substance. They are composed of only the same type of atoms. There are neither proportions nor random mixing of substances. So can we say that compounds and mixtures are made up of elements? Absolutely. So in nature, it implies that elements are the basic forms of every material that we find around. And hence, in order to study every substance around us, we need to begin with studying the various elements. So where do we begin? Maybe the reactivity, or maybe the physical properties first, right? I'm asking if we can study the reactivity and physical properties of each of the elements. Is that feasible? Well, all these would have been valid only if the elements would be few in numbers. Do you know the number of elements that exist? Astonishingly, the number of elements that we find naturally occurring is 98, while the total number of elements known to mankind is 118. So how do we study each element individually for all its properties? Looking at the number of elements that exist, I don't think it would be convenient to pick every element individually and study all the properties, right? Imagine you have to organize the kitchen. You will not place any vessel or eatable randomly anywhere. You will organize the shelves and refrigerator in the most convenient way which is suitable for your needs. Similarly, for studying so many elements, we need to organize them appropriately. An organization begins with arrangement. Yes, arranging the various elements is the first step towards understanding their properties. And arrangement is possible only if we categorize them, right? This is how we organize the elements. And this process of categorization helps us study the elements with ease. In other words, we've classified the elements here. Classification of elements is categorizing the various elements into groups based on similarities and differences in their properties. The classification system helps us in grouping the various elements into categories, which we refer to as the periods. Hence, the system is also referred to as the periodic classification of elements. Let's get to know how periodic classification was carried out in the early days of emerging chemistry when not many elements were known to people.
There is always a purpose for what we are studying and why we are studying. When we are not knowing about why, we will not get our answers, right? So I just want to make you aware about the purpose behind understanding periodic classification of elements, why it is necessary to know. So this video will tell you the motive. So watch it.
Let's play a game. There is a prize for the student who first searches where I have hidden the box of chocolates. Sir, but how do we search for it? Are you giving us any hints? No, Saga. There will be no hints. You have to find out on your own. Do you think it will be easy? The entire class will keep searching for it, and this would lead to chaos. So, I don't think so. Sagar, you are correct. Similarly, when elements were discovered, there was a chaos. Let me tell you about this in detail. Children, in this lesson, we will learn about the basis on which elements are classified. Objectives. At the end of this lesson, you'll be able to describe the early attempts at classifying elements, explain Mendeleev's periodic table, explain the modern periodic table. Early attempts at classification of elements. In the early days, scientists classified elements purely on the basis of whether they were metals or non-metals. This had its own limitations. All elements were grouped in only two categories. This made the metals category very big. Some elements had the properties of both metals and non-metals. They could not be placed in any of the classes. This increased the need to identify some kind of pattern or regularity in the properties of the elements and then classify